So what I thought is I thought a little bit about a couple of projects and work that we've done over the last couple of years to show the other types of expertise that we have. So this is very much a mixed bag. Lots of stuff there. We can go back further, but I really scratch a couple of themes, and I think give you an idea what the work can do and maybe put things together.
Just before you keep going, there's just a few comments in the chat. Might be just worth checking in on that.
Are people willing to share slides? I guess yes.
There'll be a price.
So yes, we will share slides as well.
Okay.
I think otherwise we are good. Yeah.
We might share a modified version of ours, if that's okay, because it's only got preliminary results on.
Yeah, that's good. Very quickly, what do I thought I quickly touch upon? This is what we call the best idea. Whenever we talk to external partners, this is somehow trying to communicate what we try to do and why we believe it makes sense to bring economists together with behavioral scientists, with engineers, with whatever, anybody who's interested in innovation. And whenever you talk to behavioral economists, you very often see a four-step procedure to somehow understand the problem really deeply. That's where I find, for example, working with people like you very interesting. It's not just understanding the economics and the behavioral problems, but also understanding the scientific problems, the engineering problems, the real-world problems. But then also working together on trying to understand what is actually best practice. What is what we want to achieve? The economists talk about first best, because then you can actually see where problems are and you can start to think about, do I need a technical solution? Do I need an economic solution? Do I need a behavioral solution? That's a little bit what we try to do. So what I do and what I will focus on now is a little bit providing insights how I feel economics and other parts of economics and behavioral economics can actually help to contribute to better understand these challenges and therefore maybe see other ways or give you an idea what type of work we could do together as well, generate ideas there. First thing, economic theory. We heard a little bit about expert services, and it's a little bit an underlying underlying theme that we had before there. A lot of decisions are made because you need to talk to people like you, experts, and how can we use some economics to understand what happens there? Well, how can we look at behavioral economics in that context? So this is a bit something I always like to talk about. And I have shared that with you. I was very lucky. Early research of mine was written up by The Economist, and nobody can summarize your own research in one page as good as they can somehow. So it really helps to talk about it. But the main idea is that I think in a more and more complex world, whether it's bioeconomy or we talk about other innovations, experts play more and more a role because we need their advice to make good decisions, right? With more and more complex world, more and more or newer innovations, we somehow rely on each other to actually learn what is a good decision. And in this body of work, in a broad way, really just tries to understand what are the economic incentives in this way, what are the drivers there. That's where I started. But you can go on and think more about what are technical challenges, where do we really rely on these type of judgments, where can we automatize it, where can we use some sort of technologies to overcome that, but then also starting to think more about how can we learn about behaviors in this space. So some of the work that we talked about before is really going into trying to understand how is this relevant. Do people trust advice, and do people perform according to that, right? There's a lot more that we can drag out of economics. I don't want to go in there, but I think sometimes it helps to think about these concepts as well and try to ask what's the type of product you're talking about? What's the credence aspect of it? What's the search aspect? And there's something where I feel it could be worthwhile to just look at problems and actually have deeper understanding in what happens here. We use some of these type of work, for example, to work with the Department of Education, where they talk to us about vocational education. Interesting enough, one of the typical examples were trainings in rural areas. How can we get people to give people the right level of training? And we really started to think through these type of issues.
It's better to use the scroll.
The scroll. There we go. Very quickly, another example of that. If you look into agriculture and new products, there's a lot of expert services involved around determining what is actually food quality. With Vel, we worked on beef ledger, so certification, using technology to certify biological characteristics. If we think about fisheries, dolphin-friendly tuna or organic tomatoes or nutritious enhanced bananas, whatever you have, you would need to have some sort of certification system trying to understand this type of credentials. Would be an example to actually dig deeper into the type of credence goods literature. You can have very simple results, and this is interesting in my eyes in the sense of this could inform you about these benchmarks, right? What is possible? Then how can we take it to the data and actually find out what happens there? I don't want to dig too deep. You can take it further, and we have done behavioral economic work that actually starts to look at how can we classify the behaviors of experts in this situation. So part of the idea of what Steve and Sam talked about is actually to take it out of a very abstract environment where you can clearly define, okay, these are the really good experts, they always are honest. These are the experts that are driven by some sort of motives that are based on fairness. These are people that are very selfish, close to the Homo economicus model, to take that into the field and actually try to understand, what type of environment do we work in? Can we potentially inform, from a policy perspective, what are the people that we would want in a certain industry to make this type of steps? So really starting to think about how do we bring the right people together, and using behavioral economics insights for that, in my eyes, has a lot of potential to do more, and also I think work in a combination of the teams that we have here. Very quickly, and this is a completely now for something completely different. That's not too bad in 15 minutes, I hope. I hope it's still good. We have two projects currently going, one with IP Australia and one with a conglomerate of Queensland government departments, using existing, call it big data. And I just want to tap on one of these examples, namely to use this type of behavioral economic perspective in the sense that I just talked about bringing the right people together. So this partly is research that I think would be very interesting to think about in the bioeconomy as well. But it's also an idea to think about how can we maybe apply some of what we know already, your knowledge, with our knowledge to actually generate new ideas for Queensland, Australia, the CRCs and the RDCs that we have in actually understanding what I would call the innovation landscape. So taking a behavioral economic perspective to what I would call mapping, right? So very, very quickly, the example is unfortunately not agricultural innovation, but maybe you can think AI as that. It's artificial intelligence and machine learning. And IP Australia more or less asked us, and it's an ongoing project, but I think it's particularly good to illustrate these type of arguments and this type of work, the capacity that we have in BEST, to look at what is the impact and the implications for innovation in Australia if we look at artificial intelligence and look at the IP landscape and what else we can learn. So what I show you now is mainly the analysis of LinkedIn data. So we can say a little bit about where is AI currently used in industry. And the plan is to generate similar maps, and that's what we currently work on with respect to patent information. So really mapping research capacity, knowing where you guys sit across Australia as the agro innovators, and combining it, for example, with where businesses are to bring the right people together and actually grow this potential to collaborate, right? Instead of having just small groups working together, how can we actually get the people to bring people together? What did we do? We looked at LinkedIn data, used the API, drew out all the type of enterprises that either have people that claim to have AI knowledge or not claim, that on their LinkedIn profile state that they have AI knowledge. So a couple of keywords that identifies that. And then we looked as well at their job advertisements. So existing people, but also who is currently looking for that to get an idea. This is a technology that's currently more frequently engaged with. What's the capacity that companies have? Where do we see that they try to grow? That's just how do we do that? And this is the type of information. And look, we are lucky. There is even agriculture and fisheries as an industry sector in there, so we can actually find out who is currently hiring staff. And similarly, we have information about who has already staff. And I just gave you a couple of the type of graphs. So this is relative. What's the share that it's people on LinkedIn. Maybe it's not surprising that more of them have this type of skills, but you do get an idea where are companies currently with respect to certain technologies, where are they currently looking for jobs. And you can look at several characteristics. This was just one example. So you find that larger enterprises are more likely already to engage, but there are some SMEs. More people have multi-location when they engage with this technology instead of single location, but that's just different type of parameters, and you could look at that, and we would want to do that in context of the research question. And you continue. I think the most interesting question or example that I find, and there I want to maybe stop with this mapping exercise, is that you can actually start looking at what are the areas. Right, so we can actually map as well where are they geographically located, right? And this is this idea to actually do the next step, use the existing data, trying to understand what are drivers of collaboration to then actually see where are hotspots, or if you take a Queensland perspective, where is it maybe that we are currently lacking and we want to emphasize more as a way to go. I think we could think more carefully as our group as well to actually see what are potential partners. How can we work with people and actually get the right group of people together? So that's, I think, a little bit the two things that I wanted to emphasize. You know, there is a little bit of, there's a good bit of economic theory you can hear and think about. I think Vincent will touch a bit more on how economics can be used there. But there's also this type of capacity to use a behavioral economic mindset to look at these big data sets and actually try to get this type of mapping informed and think slightly different about that data in the context. So that was lots of things that I tried to touch upon, but maybe interesting for future discussions. Thank you.